So here's a story that's a real head scratcher. In India, a brand new set of rules designed specifically to stop discrimination on university campuses has somehow managed to do the complete opposite. It set off this huge wave of protests, caused officials to resign, and even forced the government to get involved. It's a massive paradox, and it gets right to the heart of a really complex debate.
So that's the big question we're going to dig into today, right? How on earth did a policy that was supposed to make campus life safer and more fair for everyone become so incredibly controversial? Let's peel back the layers and see what's going on.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the backlash itself, then we'll look at the actual problem these rules were trying to solve. After that, we'll get into what the guidelines really say, explore the core reasons people are protesting, and finally look at this tough challenge of balancing safety and fairness for absolutely everyone. Okay, so the reaction to these new guidelines from India's University Grants Commission, the UGC, well, it wasn't some quiet academic discussion. Oh no, it was immediate, and it was intense. We're talking students protesting not just on their own campuses, but right on the doorstep of the UGC headquarters. And it's not just students. We've actually seen government officials publicly resign over this, which just shows you how high the stakes are here. Things got so heated that India's Union Education Minister had to come out and make a public statement, promising that these guidelines would not be misused.
Now, to really get why this all blew up, we have to rewind a bit and understand why these rules were even created. They didn't just come out of thin air. They were a direct response to a very real and, frankly, a growing problem. And check out this number, because this really puts it all into perspective. The UGC's own report showed that complaints of caste-based discrimination in universities have skyrocketed by a staggering 118% in just 5 years. A number like that is exactly why they felt they had to do something.
And, this conversation has been building for a long, long time. We're talking over a decade. The Supreme Court actually ordered the UGC to create anti-discrimination rules way back in 2012. Then, in 2016, the tragic case of Rohit Vemula really forced the issue of campus discrimination into the national spotlight. And by 2020, the national education policy was explicitly calling for equity in schools. So, with all that as the backdrop, what exactly did the UGC come up with? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of these new equity guidelines that are at the center of this whole firestorm. So the rules basically create a new 3-part system on every single campus. You've got these equity committees at the top, run by the head of the university, to handle complaints. Then you have equity squads, whose job is to keep an eye on places where students might feel vulnerable. And finally, you've got equity ambassadors, who are meant to be a friendly point of contact all around the university to help promote inclusion. Okay, now this right here is a really crucial change. The actual definition of discrimination has gotten a lot broader. It's not just about obvious, explicit insults anymore. The new rules cover implicit actions, too. The subtle stuff, like deliberately ignoring someone or sidelining them. The idea is that those actions can also be a form of biased treatment. The new guidelines also expand who gets protection. The older rules were really focused on students from what are known as scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. But these new rules widen that circle, explicitly adding other backward classes and persons with disabilities to the list. So you hear all that, and it sounds pretty positive, right? Protecting more students in more ways. So why on earth are people so angry? Well, the objections really boil down to 3 main concerns. First, critics are calling it a one-sided system. Second, they're pointing to what they see as a huge loophole, no penalty for filing false cases. And third, they believe the definitions, especially that word implicit, are just way too vague and could be easily twisted. Let's dig into that first point. The way the rules are written, the complaint system is specifically for students from those protected groups we mentioned. So critics are asking a pretty simple question. What if a student from the general category feels they're being discriminated against? Under this new system, it looks like there's no clear way for them to file a complaint. And that leads right into the second major worry. If you look at other big protective laws in India, like the POCSO Act, which protects children, they include specific penalties for anyone who files a knowingly false or malicious complaint. But these UGC rules, there's nothing. Critics say without that kind of safeguard, the system is just wide open to being abused. And this is where that third point about vague definitions really comes into play. Critics are afraid that the broad idea of implicit discrimination could be turned into a weapon. They argue that in the often intense world of campus politics, A subjective claim that someone ignored you could be used to unfairly target a rival and do serious damage to their career. So what you've got is this huge clash between a clear need to protect students and these really serious concerns about fairness and the potential for misuse. So where does this whole debate go from here?
Well, with the backlash growing, the union education minister himself had to get involved. He came out and publicly promised everyone that he would personally make sure the guidelines are not misused. Now, that's a huge acknowledgement that the government hears the concerns, but we'll have to wait and see what changes, if any, are actually made.
When you strip it all away, this whole thing really comes down to one core dilemma. On one side, you have proponents who say that given the data, strong, decisive action is absolutely crucial to protect vulnerable students. But on the other side, you have critics who are terrified that without proper safeguards, these rules could end up creating a whole new kind of unfairness.
And that leaves us with the million-dollar question. It's the challenge that not just the UGC is facing, but really universities all over the world. How do you build a system that truly protects the people who need it most, while at the same time guaranteeing that the process is fair and just for everyone involved? It's an incredibly delicate balancing act, and there are no easy answers.